Hello, everybody. This is the first lecture which I'm going to take on animal diversity, form, function, anatomy, and evolution. My name is Thomas, and I'm working with Renfrew and Scott in this course. So I will be taking you over the first 4 weeks of the course, and it's going to be an exciting one because it's kind of curious. I actually have a PhD in zoology, which is the science of animals and of animal diversity and of evolution. And I actually haven't taught terribly much zoology because I have become a marine biologist. However, when I actually was given the opportunity to talk to you guys about the wonders of the animal world, I thought this is absolutely fantastic because it actually gives us a chance to focus on stuff which is amazingly enchanting, I should say. Now, just in case you wonder about this strange picture on the left here, I think you should wonder. You should always wonder. Never trust anything which academics actually tell you, ever, really. I mean, they're all, mad people. But if you take this aside, there is a method to the madness here, because what I wanted to illustrate here is that in some sort of weird and wonderful sense, this course is actually a little bit upside down in terms of how we actually approach the topics. Now, you can also see those animals are upside down, but normally we would actually have, 10 lectures, starting out with genetics and then evolution, and then you slowly move from the primitive animals right up to humans. Now we do it completely different. We're actually starting out with us, with mammals. So we actually go from the top down and then filter down to bacteria. I think there is even, some mention that in the course you might have to do some botany, plants and stuff. I have quite a bit to say about that. I did grow up in a botanic garden. My father is a botanist, so I basically hadn't a very, very good childhood in terms of intellectual stimulus because plants, they just sit there and do actually very little. However, animals are much more exciting and actually go out and do stuff. And basically, I became a zoologist because everything you need to know about botany, you can actually learn in 20 minutes. No, it's not quite true, but never mind. Now, when I started off zoology, I was reminded of a book we were given by the professor who took us, which was this one, about these strange creatures here. And basically, some guy had a sense of humor. I mean, there are Germans, I'm not German, with a sense of humor. And he essentially wrote a book about fantastic animals. And they all stood on their head, and their noses, were shaped by evolution to fulfill all sorts of weird and wonderful processes in nature. Here's another example. You can actually see this one. He jumps with the nose, around, and the tail actually catches, bumblebees. Here you can actually see another one which actually walks on his nose, and he actually catches, fruits. In this case, it almost looks like some sort of bean or maize or whatever. Now, all of that is, I think, fantastic because in order to actually do that, you actually need to know quite a bit of zoology. We're not going to be that cruel to you in terms of having you to read a book about fantastic animals. This is what we had to do in the first, literally, 4 months of my degree. And then we basically were told why evolution can actually result in rather interesting structures. So we actually are a little bit less esoteric, and we basically start with real animals, with real knowledge, and we're going to highlight stuff for you. Now, today's lecture is about those creatures here. It's us, it's mammals. It's basically the last lineage of evolution. Some would say the most evolved one, but I don't really like that term too much because every branch of animal diversity has evolved in a different direction. And it's very arguable whether some traits are truly more evolved in terms of being better in the usage we use normally in everyday life than others. However, as an important message here, we are basically animals. We are just, and we get to that in about 45 minutes, we're not terribly much different from the great apes. So this lecture is largely about us. It's the group of animals we belong to, the mammals. Now, before we actually go and show you slides with numbers and graphs and that kind of scientific stuff, let me show you 4 videos I have selected from YouTube. YouTube is actually, of course, sometimes, you can spend hours on it looking up different car tires or gearboxes. I have a Land Rover, so now it turns out to be the case. No other animal group on planet Earth has such a large diversity of body size. The smallest mammal is the bumblebee bat on the left here, 4 centimeters long, about 2 inches, and 2 grams heavy or light. The largest animal on Earth is the blue whale. It is actually 30 meters long and it weighs 30 tons. So astonishing orders of magnitude, but both of them are mammals. And even weirder is the fact that one is flying and one is swimming. Yes, the great majority of mammals occur on dry land, but the diversity of habitats they have conquered is basically endless. They're everywhere. Some of them fly, most of them run around or skid around on land, but many of them are in the ocean as well. Now, you might actually ask yourself, what is a mammal? What defines that group? What defines us? Well, if you look at your forearm or you scratch your head or do whatever you like to do to illustrate that, the 2 most defining characteristics are we are hairy. Some of us are more hairy than others, and nothing illustrates that better than that hairy, woolly mammals standing here. And the Latin word mamma is, basically in English, breast. So we have mammary glands to suckle our young. It's an astonishing, really, evolutionary achievement, except for a very small group of mammals. We don't really have to, lay eggs, and, we can actually care for our young. That's one of the reasons we presume is why we are so successful, because our offspring usually have a much higher survival rate. So it's hairy bits and it's having mammary glands. The other thing also, which mammals have, which is very, very unique, and I'll show you a few more examples later on, but this is just to prep your brain, is we have very specialized teeth. If you look at this fella here, the teeth in the jaw are not all the same. Now you might say, oh, well, that's a bit of, an obvious thing. Well, not quite really, because most other animals, you look at lizards or many other animals, they all have more or less the same dentition, the same shape and size of teeth going up and down the jaw. The other thing we have is we got a secondary pellet. What does that mean? The roof of our oral cavity of our mouth has basically creates a separation between our nasal passages here and our oral passages. You can see this quite nicely here. Here's the nasal passage of that sheep's skull, and it goes down here, goes down here, goes down here, and then it goes back into the trachea here and the esophagus. What that basically means is the sheep, like this one here, well, not this one anymore, but while it was still alive, can basically chew and eat while it's taking up oxygen through the nose. Now, reptiles, amphibians don't have that. So essentially, they have to stop for actually getting oxygen into their lungs. It's a very, very unique adaptation. We forget about that. So let's have a look at the diversity of animals. What kind of mammals do we have out there? Now here's a early drawing of a platypus from 1799. And that was actually brought back by the naturalists, by some English naturalists, to the British Museum. And when the first platypus arrived as a specimen, people actually thought it's a hoax. They just thought like, oh, somebody made that up. You kind of, put extra skin on the forelimbs here. They thought, oh, they mounted a duckbill on some sort of otter or beaver in Australia. And I tell you what, if you actually have seen platypuses swimming around, uh, it's not so far-fetched an assumption. So if you want to do a very, very rough and quick classification of mammals, there are basically two big groups. The one is what we call a Prototerrier, and the one is called the terrier here. Now, what is actually significant is terrier is the Greek word for beast, for wild beast. So the Prototerrier is basically those which came before the true mammals. There's quite a few extinct lineages here, but one group of these really primitive mammals survives. They developed the pellet, they developed good lower jaws, blah, 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 but they already have hair and mammary glands. They also have, very long bones and so forth and so forth. But the one thing they didn't lose, because ultimately we all come from birds and reptiles, right? The one thing they didn't actually lose is the laying of eggs. They still produce eggs. So they're called the Ornithodelphia, or we colloquially call them the monotremes. Now the monotremes were previously distributed also in Africa and in South America and throughout Asia. But now they are confined basically to 5 species in Papua New Guinea and Australia, 4 species of echidna and the platypus. The next group is, of course, what we in Australia even used to name our sports team. This is one of the rare moments, of course, where the Wallabies, I still support them, managed to defeat the All Blacks. Look at this guy, Rudimentary. So here we got wallabies. Wallabies belong to the group of what we call the Metatario, which basically means in between the primitive, Prototerrier and the true ones over here. Now, what they have achieved is they lost the eggshells, so they bear live young. However, the young are born very prematurely, so to speak, and they're very small, and they basically go into a pouch. Now, the pouch is actually there to protect those very small and born young from the elements, and they actually crawl onto small little teats and actually get sucked there for quite a while. So essentially, the gestation period of marsupials is a short one, but we managed, particularly in Australia, here, to have quite a bit of diversity of them. Now, and as you can see, ultimately, the next step is the eutheria. Never mind about those names up here. Those are the mammals which have developed a very, very unique organ. It's called the placenta. Now, the placenta enables true mammals to bear young which are highly mature. You might actually think as a baby, it's a baby thing. It lies there and cries and does other things on the other end. But it actually is born at a very advanced stage compared to when something comes out of an egg or for marsupials. And what many people do not realize is that long gestation period enabled mammals to live in environments which are often, fairly inhospitable. What it also seemed to have enabled is an incredible evolutionary diversification of the eutheria. One could almost say, is there something like a typical mammal? The answer is no. I give you 3 examples here. At the top here is a pangolin. Now, pangolins, of course, have a terrible blight because they're the most trafficked animal in the world, being harvested or poached, I should say, from forests and savannas and then sold to the traditional medicine market in China and other countries, which basically have a high demand for what they call bushmeat or traditional Chinese medicine. And of course, there is quite a lot of reports that the COVID-19 virus basically came from a pangolin on a fresh meat market and basically jumped the species barrier. And now we have to have the consequences of it. And we got things like, of course, like sheep and gorillas, but they're all mammals. But you look at them and you sort of like, really? They all belong to the same class of animals? Well, they do, because they all have a placenta, they all have hair, they all have a secondary pellet, and so forth. Now, let's have a look at all those beasts and Latin, or Greek. Terion means wild beast. Now, I should actually say, and I have it here, we will talk about that a little bit later. Oops, here we go. If you actually want to buy, a textbook, you can actually buy something boring like this. I say, well, you're a student, you have to buy it. Or you get this thing here. It's absolutely fantastic. And I have to say, you look at the diversity of animals here, it is absolutely scientifically correct. And what is even more astonishing is, look at this, claws and jaws. I mean, it is so fantastic. There we go. I'm actually, at the moment drafting a children's book. I'm not going to reveal the topic right now. And it is not a simple matter to get accurate information into a language that is accessible, and also which is still accurate. So if you want to actually know something about diversity, or if you have children, you don't need to have children. I bought it for myself. Buy the Book of Beasts. I don't know the person. I picked it up in a bookshop in Humanity by complete chance. So I don't get actually any economic benefit from it, just in case you wonder. Now, this is a horrible looking, complicated table here, but read through it, because it illustrates to you, how different orders of mammals have developed very, very unique adaptations. So the first group is the order Proboscidea, and basically those are the elephants. They have elongated the nose into a trunk, and we have all seen the pictures or observed it ourselves. I used to actually live in South Africa for 7 years, and we did a lot of time up in Botswana and in Zimbabwe, and you will actually be acutely aware, but it is a fantastic adaptation to life, and it works supremely well, because essentially you don't have hands to go about your daily business, but you do it all with your trunk. Interesting idea. And it works, of course, because they're the largest land mammals. I mean, this is a picture where you can actually say only a mother can kind of, love that sort of beauty, but it's, really very, very cute. Now, those are essentially of sorts, elephants which went back into the ocean. And essentially an elegant body with a fluke at the back and front flippers. But what is really cool is people say, oh, what is the evidence that this is a mammal? Well, firstly, they have actually very, very small mammary glands. They're still visible, but they still have hair. Those hairs at the front are simply very, very highly developed sensory hairs, which most mammals have. We have them as well, but of course, they're reduced now. So here we go. Now, even stranger is that kind of group. And it's the slosses from South America. Also, the anteaters belong to that, and other groups. And what they basically do is they have very, very unique claws, which enables them to either dig up ant hills, or which they use to actually hang in trees for a very, very long time and don't do actually terribly much. Now, if you ever, I think, wanted a pet, and I don't know how to actually get one of those, not in Australia, of course, is I desperately, I think, want an armadillo. And they have developed a feature where their skin, just like the pangolins, is actually arranged in this fantastic array of horny blades. But they still have hair and they still suckle their young, so they're mammals. They almost look like some weird, mixture of a reptile and a true mammal. So armadillos, really, really fantastic. Then we go on and we go to mammals where the skin develops not only hairs, as on the front here, but spines. Spines are just basically glorified hairs. They're just bigger hairs. Now, if you actually think about that one, it's a fantastic way to protect yourself against predators. So those are the hedgehogs, the trumos, the shrews, and relatives, porcupines also belong to that. I mean, isn't that cute? Next up, of course, I have also a secret business plan how to make money over the holidays. It will all be revealed if somebody goes to news on the boardwalk during Christmas. But I picked that up idea up, once in San Fran when somebody jumped out, behind the hedge, dressed in a kind of really horrible costume, and he actually scared people, which is actually quite funny. Everybody gave him money. Anyways, my daughters are, of course, terribly embarrassed by that. So I still have to sort of, think whether I truly do it. But I thought a vampire would be, a good idea. Never mind. I actually went to Dracula's castle a few years ago, just to check it out. And you actually think like, oh, it must be this dark building in a gorge, with wolves howling and bats flying around. No, it was this actually very, very pleasant little country house, painted white amongst the cherry trees on a beautiful May, where the birds were chirping in the sun. So that was a bit disappointing. Never mind. And of course, Dracula is, associated with bats. Now, the Chiroptera have done something completely different. I said, well, you know what? I know this whole mammal business is really cool because we got a placenta and we got hair and we are very successful in raising our young. But what I really want to do, I want to be like a bird. I want to actually fly. So what they actually did, they developed fantastically long fingers, grew skin in between them, extended the skin all the way back to their legs, and they can actually fly through the night. As a matter of fact, they can fly so well that you can't often hear them, and they, locate, the physical objects and prey in the habitat with echolocation. Here's a joke. How do you kill? Here we go. How do you kill a vegetarian vampire? With a stake in the heart. There we go. I had to say that. Anyways, right, on we go. Here is a fox. Now, the fox is, of course, a wily animal. Oh, the fox is actually getting... here we go. And that order is, of course, what many animal ecologists, particularly, when you start out as a student, and nothing wrong with that, want to become, People said, oh, those are the dogs, the cats, the bears, the raccoons, the minks, the sea lions, the seals, the walruses, the otters, like things with big teeth which eat other animals, often in a very, very spectacular fashion. So the order carnivora, carnivorous means eating meat, is a very, very diverse one, but basically they're all highly evolved predators on two legs. Then we actually go a little bit on. Isn't that a fantastic zebra? Now, the next two groups are often also referred to as the ungulates. Ungulate basically means having, get a bit of more like that, basically means having a hoofed foot. And there's two different differentiations here. We either got the horses, the rhinos, the zebras, or the tapirs, which have either a single toe, a single hoof, or three. They're basically the uneven-toed ungulates. Or we have the same thing, which is basically the even-toed ones, which are the artiodactylar. Things like, the camels, the antelopes, the deers, the sheep, the giraffes, the cattle. Many people often associate those kind of ungulates being a typically mammal. Well, and they are, because they got often very enlarged mammary glands, and if you like cheese or milk or yogurt, there you go. It all comes from those kind of mammary glands of the hoofed animals, which are called the artiodactyla. Now, cetaceans. Isn't it a fantastic sperm whale? Look at this jaw. I mean, incredible. Now, again, we have a group of animals, of mammals. The mammals actually came, of course, from primitive forebears about 200 million years ago. They invaded the land. They came out from the swamps, the monsters from the swamp. And a group went back into the sea. And those are the cetaceans now. They still have actually a few hairs around the body, but they don't actually need a fur anymore because they use fat layers to insulate their body. Of course, they are also warm-blooded, like other mammals, but the task of keeping them warm is now done by an insulating layer of fat rather than by hair. Right. Ooh, it's not done by hair, because the next group are the hairs. Ooh, I never realized that. How is that? Now, hairs are the lagomorpha, and it's basically the rabbits and the beakers and so forth. Now, the unique feature about the lagomorphs are that they chew, copious amounts of grass, and they can also, if you ever try to keep rabbits at home, they actually eat, themselves wooden partitions and the boards on their cages, because their front teeth they're down by late, but they actually continually grow back. Now, then we also got a similar idea in the rodentia, and those are, of course, the squirrels, the rodents, basically, the chipmunks, the rats, the mice, the beavers, the porcupines, the woodchucks, and the lemmings. So everything kind of ratty and mousy belongs to that particular group, and there are the largest or the most specious group of all the mammals in terms of the species they have. And last but not least, I don't know why this guy actually posts there, but I suppose it should actually illustrate here the evolution as we go from probably an Australopithecus or something like this, to Homo habilis and Homo neanderthalensis, or maybe this one, Homo erectus. This looks almost like a gorilla, and this is probably one of his buddies and him. So that's us, the primates, apes. Now at at primates, because I'd like to actually conclude the lecture on. Let's get a bit more light in here. I'd like to conclude the lecture on the primates, of course, with something about ourselves, the mammals. So, here are a few surprising facts many people don't know. Now, I selected that one again because you should never be in any doubt that mammals have hair. And unfortunately, those creatures here are, their population numbers are dwindling because people like to wear fur coats. And of course, if you are a leopard in the middle of winter in the Himalayas or the Chinese, high plateau at temperatures of -30, you need a very good coat. And that's why wearing, not just as a fashion statement, a leopard coat is still considered in many regions of the world a very, very useful collection of hairs. And the prey animal they are getting at are yaks. And of course, yaks are the perfect adaptation for cold climate. And that adaptation, again, is coming about from having lots of hair. And last but not least, here we go. This is a very touching story about pangolins again. Now, I selected that specifically because it is very topical and also because it kind of warms the heart. But more importantly, from a zoological point of view, is the fact that pangolins have this, flexible suit of armor. And that flexible suit of armor is made of scales. And the scales are no different than our fingernails. So again, it is something very, very fantastically unique how hair can transform because it's made from a unique protein called keratin into scales to cover an animal like a suit of armor. I think it's astonishing. In any case, let's have a look at that.
A pangolin is a special animal. In the past, in Zimbabwe, we give them to the chiefs as a gift. I was 28 years in my life when I saw first pangolin. I know now the pangolin is the most poached animal, more than rhino, more than elephant. Here in Zimbabwe, we are proud to save the pangolins. Every day with my friends, we protect the animal. We walk them, we feed them, we protect them like our children. We hope the world can see what we are doing in Zimbabwe to save the animal.
Right. So all of that is, of course, related to hair. Now, what is actually quite funny, when I wrote that lecture yesterday, I thought, oh well, I have to illustrate a claw because claws are made from keratin as well, just like hair. And I thought, what comes up? You actually put in bear claw, and here you go, a grizzly bear paw slipper. I mean, fantastic. I mean, who doesn't want actually a pair of those? In any case, it's actually quite funny in this age nowadays writing lectures because you try to illustrate stuff, and as you know, when you Google, you never quite know what is going to come up. But here is basically protecting us from mechanical injury because it provides a coat from invasion by microbes, UV radiation, and so forth. It's actually the function of the skin. It also provides thermal insulation. We have to actually wear coats, but mammals don't because they got a coat. They got a coat of hair. A snow leopard doesn't get coat because the hair insulates the animal perfectly. The skin also is involved in excretion, we sweat, and in water regulation. And hairs also are very, very important for sensory perception. In most mammals, except for us, really, there is long hairs around the mouth, and they sit in an enlarged follicle. And every time the hair bends, it sends a sensory signal, and then you're going, okay, right, I touched something, or there's a bit more wind, or there's a bit more movement, or whatever. So essentially, it's a mechanical movement receptor. They are highly accurate and very widely distributed in mammals. Now, hair is formed as I have, illustrated, by it's a feature basically of the skin of the epidermis, and it's made from keratin. All hair is made from keratin, and because it's basically an accumulation of dead cells, it gets pushed out basically from the follicle, and then as it actually grows, of course, mine is actually getting grayer and grayer. It's, a big problem. Essentially, in us, it grows gradual, and we also shed hair. In others, the shedding process of hair occurs in bouts, in periodic bursts of losing hair. And that actually means many animals change their coat from, let's say, a browner variety, which is, providing good camouflage during summer, to, a white variety in the winter. Of course, we humans can't actually do that. And when I used to be in the army in Australia, it was absolutely bloody terrible because he had to actually, change from, brown, camouflage or green brown camouflage to white camouflage as he actually walked up the mountain, and then he actually had to go back. And we had this basically uniforms which were white on the inside or the outside, really, but you could basically turn them inside out. And of course, you can imagine if you have to actually look after your own clothes. White is, of course, very good camouflage, but it's not something you want to give, 1,000 in a full battalion of 18-year-old boys. Any case, so as I've explained, claws, hooves, nails, rhino horns, they're all basically massive keratin bodies. And the vibrissae, which are the whiskers, as we commonly call them, they are very important for mechanical perception. And they also occur, around the eyes. Here we go. How do you like my lashes? Or they occur, around, the pores, as is illustrated here. And here we go, keratin, and so forth. Now, here's a bit of a smelly subject. You might actually think, what has a perfume bottle with a stag on it got to do with a mammal? Well, it happens to be the case we all smell. Some of us smell better than others. But essentially, our skin, and this is a very unique mammalian feature, has quite a lot of different glands. We got what we call sebaceous glands. They produce an oily substance, and which is basically used to lubricate and waterproof our skins, and for other ones which have coats, not a coat that we wear, but a collection of hairs. We also got sweat glands, and they're called sudoriferous glands, and they basically secrete either a watery substance, which is mostly water, which just basically keeps us cool, but sometimes it actually also has secretions that contain salt, not a problem, but also urea. And of course, the microbial decomposition of the urea causes us or anybody else or your gym wear. Or when I come back from a good cycle in summer, you have to actually put that straight, not into the pool room, but into the garage and wash it, because basically the decomposition, the bacterial attack of the urea causes smells which we actually find not terribly appealing. But here's the really cool thing. Many animals have scent glands, and we often talk about a musky smell. And there's deer like those musk deers here who have massively enlarged anal glands, which they actually produce a very, very strong smelling substance. And, humans actually have used that to, put into perfumes. And it's sort of supposed to be that masculine, kind of Bear Grylls, smell, going into the mountains and surviving a snowstorm by crawling inside a dead deer carcass, that kind of stuff. But those glands are still with us as humans. Don't try and pretend we don't have them. And essentially, they produce pheromones. Pheromones are chemicals which we take up with our nose for defense. Sometimes, we actually smell differently when we are aggressive, for sex recognition, for territorial behavior, for courtship, all sort of interesting things. And of course, the other massive invention of mammals is we have mammary glands. Here we go. Now, what is actually quite interesting, because this I actually came up with this joke. So, what do you call a cow that ceased giving milk. It's an udder failure. And of course, this one says, something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. But, never mind. Here we go. So mammary glands are basically specialized glands to secrete milk following the birth of the young. And in most mammals like us, they basically have many ducts, and some of them are enlarged to actually store the milk, and they all basically converge on a nipple or a teat. And what's also interesting is that the sucking response in the young releases hormones, which in turn then basically signal to the gland, get on with it, produce more milk. And why cows are so valued by humans is that when all those ducts converge just before they come out, they have an enlarged nipple, and there's a really big system where the milk accumulates. Essentially, that's how you actually milk them. There we go. Fun fact. The other thing is, I told you about the secondary pellet. Now, where did I put that? So you can actually figure that out yourself. If you put your tongue just behind your top front teeth towards the top of your mouth and feel around, you will actually, or you can use your finger, you can actually, feel there's a hard, bony plate here, illustrated here and illustrated here. Now, if you actually put your tongue a little bit further back, you can actually sense a transition, I should say, between the hard, bony roof and a sort of softer part. Oh, here we go. And that softer part is called the soft pellet, which is basically just a skinny, fleshy extension, of, here we go. It's here, and there's the hard pellet. And it almost completely separates now the nasal passage from the oral passage. Now, this is a massive, architectural anatomical invention of evolution for mammals, because they can now basically speak with their mouths full, which a reptile or a bird could never do. So quite a cool invention. Right. And another defining characteristic I told you is that we as humans have, all mammals have very, very unique teeth. As a matter of fact, I used to teach a course to medicine students. Those are fun lectures, 1,000 people in the same lecture theater. And we had like 400 different skulls of all sorts of different animals. And that, in groups of 5, students got a few skulls. And based on the teeth formula, which we gave them, they had to actually work out what it is. Because each mammal species has a unique arrangement of teeth. So if I give you this skull and I give you this formula, you can pretty much work out that this is a dog. Now, basically, we are heterodont organisms. We have teeth which are not the same around our jaw, and each group of teeth in each species is a unique arrangement adapted to their feeding and lifestyle. The other problem is, it's not a problem. Well, it's a problem if you go to a dentist, and then they take an X-ray, and then I go, whoa, and you just see the dollars, rattling in front of your brain. I jumped off a tune, and I have to have 3 molars drilled out now because they're cracked as I sort of, came to the bottom. Probably not such a good idea. Never mind. It was fun at the time. Our teeth are what we call decudont. This basically means they are set inside a socket in the jaw, which is, of course, a marvelous invention because they are much less likely to fall out than, let's say, the teeth in reptiles or in fish. However, they're actually very hard to get out if you have them. If you have to basically extract a tooth, it's a bit of pliers, that kind of stuff. Now, we usually differentiate or distinguish between 4 different kinds of teeth in the frontier. We have the incisors. In our case, we have here 2 incisors, 1, 2, and this is for each side. So there's 4 altogether. Let's say this is on the right side. Then we have one canine, which is here, which are the conically shaped teeth used for catching, killing, tearing. I hope you don't actually go out there and sort of eat anybody right now, because only I have told you you got a canine. Apparently, it's against the law. I heard that you walk around the pavement and sort of eat people based on biological knowledge. Don't do it. So the next set is we have two premolars right here, and they're basically used in chewing and breaking up some food. And then we got the chewing teeth right at the back, and we actually have three of those, the molars. Now, not always do they all break out. And this is basically when you have a wisdom tooth right in the back. This is basically the third molar being stuck inside a jaw. I still got them all inside. That's why I have probably no wisdom. Well, maybe that's why I have such a lot of wisdom, because it's still incorporated into my skull. Never mind. So this is an amazing invention, if you think. We are the only animal group which developed this variety of shapes, of sizes, and of arrangements inside the skull to reflect different prey items. And that is also one of the reasons why essentially mammals are so incredibly successful. Now for the really cool stuff. We are but an animal. Some of us are more animal-like than others, but basically all of us are mammals. And this is a cartoon, of course, which was produced when Charles Darwin first mentioned that essentially humans are just but a continuation of the lineage which incorporates the apes and ultimately us. Now, and you can actually spend your life Googling human evolution and whether they're related to apes or not. And sometimes we actually seem to go back. And what is really quite funny, I flew to Adelaide 1.5 weeks ago when the borders opened. And I landed up literally amongst a group of Mormons. And just by complete chance, I was reading a book about human evolution. So there was a few quite interesting conversations, but let's leave religion out of that for the moment. Now, isn't that fantastic? This is the most complete skull and skeleton ever found, 47% complete. And it's probably the oldest ancestor we have, about 3 million years ago. It's called Lucy, the nickname of that particular find or fossil. And it's at the border between Kenya and Ethiopia. We went there just, I don't know. As a scientist, you actually go to weird places, because you just hear about that, and then you stand in front of the desert, a lot of sand, and go like, right, here was Lucy found. But still, it's quite touching. If you basically have taught evolution for a few years, you want to actually see how this site really looked like. And I bought my most expensive beer there for a can for $45. Which is interesting, but it takes you about 5 days to get there in the Land Rover. Any case, here's Lucy, and nobody, I think, who just basically uses common sense, who looks at this skull and this skeleton, and this is like 3 million years old, would deny, like, well, you know what, this looks pretty human to me. But you can also go to Lettoli, which is in southern Kenya, and there's a site now in Tanzania, and there's a site where obviously some sort of early human, or let's call it an early hominid. Doesn't really matter. It's all a fluid arrangement, really. Walked through the mud, and then that mud was preserved in a volcanic eruption. Those kind of footprints, very, very cool. And you can actually work out those animals actually, or those humans, hominids walked on 2 legs, so they had bipedal motion. Now, why do I put that in? If you like photography and you have a few nice cameras, and you get very nerdy, and you subscribe to various podcasts and blah 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 blah. Now the holy grail, of course, of really good photography is portrait photography. It's extremely very hard to get it right, unless you, of course, you're exceptionally good looking like me, but that's that privilege is not bestowed on too many. But the point is, really, it's all about, when you do a portrait, about the eyes. We are intensely visual animals. And that's why we spend a lot of time, really, when it comes to makeup and stuff like this, enhancing, transforming, and shaping, really, the expression from our eyes. Now, and that is important because we as humans, we have developed a large brain, and much of that brain function is actually used to process and transform visual information. But we're not alone having really large eyes. Now, this is, where do I put that? Yeah, here we go. This is the classification of the apes. We basically have, in the suborder Strepsirrhinae, all the lemurs, the eyes, and the bush babies, which hang out in Madagascar, Africa, and Asia. So those are probably very, very primitive primates. Then we go down to what many people would actually call, they're just monkeys, right? They are the tarsid monkeys. Look at this fella. I don't know what he has been smoking. Maybe I'm really tired of Southeast Asia. We got things like the marmosets and the ptarmiers. You see those, everywhere in zoological gardens. You got the gibbons and the siamangs from Asia. You get the baboons. I got lots of interesting stories to tell about baboons, including one we had to chase through the corridor of the zoology department because he woke up before he was supposed to perform part of a display in front of 100 students. So it was interesting. Everybody's scattering. You can't do it nowadays anymore, but it was reasonable fun. And we got monkeys, the Capucino monkeys from South America and so forth. So most people think, they're all just monkeys, right? Of different sorts, but they actually belong to an order called the primates, which includes us, because we are sitting here at the top, at the bottom. Now, you compare those 6 photographs here with those. Now it becomes really, really hard, and I leave this judgment entirely up to you. Everybody has different views. But if you actually just, try and be a biologist and try not to have yourself influenced by any, religious or any other societal belief, and just sort of compare the images here. It took me a long while. I was like, how do I really illustrate a human monkey, and or a human which is, basically has the same expression? And it just, happens to be, it was Nigel Farage who led the UK to what is quite a disastrous, basically political decision in terms of Brexit. But never mind. This is the subfamily of the hominids, or the family of the hominids. So we all are hominids. We belong to a zoological classification which includes the orangutans, it includes the chimpanzees, it includes the gorillas, and ultimately us. As a matter of fact, chimps and us are in the same tribe, and we are 99% genetically ident. So this is the current picture, but we can actually look how we actually got here. And of course, everybody has seen basically displays like this or something quite similar. What is cool though is this is illustrating what had to happen that we could actually walk on 2 legs. Now, when a monkey, I don't know how I should actually illustrate that. But when a monkey actually walks on two legs, they kind of waddle along, right? This is chimpanzees. We can actually have a smooth stride. And we have a smooth stride because one thing actually happened, and that is our femurs, at before the knee, they actually bend towards the middle of our vertical plane. That actually makes the center of gravity of the feet in line very much with our narrow hips, which are also very important that we don't actually waddle around. The other thing which we developed is an amazing ability to balance our head on top of the spine. Now, if you are a gorilla, I presume this looks like a gorilla, this is actually a problem because you've got a heavy head and it tries to fall down. But if you actually have too many gin and tonics, your head also falls down. And that means you need long processes here on your neck vertebra, which are used to attach massive neck muscles to hold your head up. We don't actually have those anymore. We don't need those anymore unless you, of course, are in the front row of a scrum in rugby. Then you actually do need them, but we are really not, well, at least I am really not designed for that. Now, those are the major evolutionary steps. We basically started to balance our head on top of the spine because we walked on two legs. Now, there's a lot of speculation, really, why we as humans are the only ones who can actually walk on two legs. Oops, what happened here? And the reason for that is that most likely there came a time when, somewhere around the split where, apes split off from hominids, where the hominids, the very early hominids, started to spend more time on the ground in the savanna, looking mostly for carrion, for fruits, and for nutty things. There's also a theory now that basically that ground movement, which you could still combine with actually living in the trees for safety, was often concentrated by searching for washed up carrion, animal cadavers on the shores of either the ocean or in inland lakes. That's actually a very widely promulgated theory now. Be that as it may, walking on two legs and still being able to climb in trees and shelter there is a major advantage. And to walk on two legs effectively is the big advantage here. So a lot of stuff actually had to happen in our skeletal structure. And we also, all primates have this unique ability to have opposable digits, either the thumb or something else in your hand. That actually means you can hold on to a branch and you can grab stuff. You can manipulate things like this pen here. You know how important that is because you try and actually teach any other animal. I tried this with my goats, didn't really go anywhere. Actually, my camera is mirrored, never mind. Essentially, if you try to, teach any animal to write you a poem, it will actually not work. There is likely going to be a mental problem, but there is a dexterity problem. We are the only group of animals which have incredible dexterity with our fingers. If you ever try and do a watchmaking course or a jewelry course, you will actually very quickly realize how little dexterity you have, but you also realize how much you can learn because anatomically and mentally we have the capacity. Now, you can actually pick up 5 books or 5 websites and study or try and learn something about the exact sequence of species which led up to us. The point is, everyone will actually show you a slightly different tree. And basically, there is hundreds of thousands of anthropologists literally figuring out how it actually worked in detail. We know all the big steps, and we are also continually learning by discovering new fossils. But basically, nobody really argues about the basic broad swath development. And that actually goes from usually very squat, very small organisms, small in terms of, sometimes physically stature, but also in terms of brain volume, to go to something which is us now, where brain volume is about 5 times bigger. We are often quite tall. We walk on 2 legs, and we have enormous capacities for tool use and to art and all sort of basically social interaction. So often this is actually a sequence of actually figuring out, how the skull developed in terms of brain volume, how the jaws developed, how the teeth developed, whether the animal could actually, or the organism could walk on 2 legs, to which extent, and so forth. And what they did culturally, because when we do culture stuff, even if we live in a cave, social basically rituals such as burials, when we make tools, when we make art, and when we paint caves, we leave stuff behind. Archaeology is basically delivering, more and more evidence, fine-scale evidence, how it actually all happened, that we went from, another group of apes to what is nowadays called Homo. Probably the oldest fossil is this one, which lived about 7 to 6 million years ago in a country which is called Chad in the Central African Republic. And it's basically quite small, and you can actually see very primitive features, a big ridge of bones above the eyes. And then basically, here is a chimpanzee, and here is a modern human, and it goes via this intermediate link which I mentioned early on, and that is Lucy. Lucy is, of course, one of the most famous ones discovered in Ethiopia. There's a site in Tanzania and one in Kenya. So essentially the Leakeys, the family Leakeys, were basically really, there was the golden decade of anthropology, discovering all those amazing Australopithecus ones. Now, then this is sort of the tree, and it goes from the common ancestors. This is the chap from Chad I just told you. And then it goes over here to Lucy, and then probably via, a sidestep of Homo habilis, which was basically the first one who possibly had, greater dexterity and almost, 50% bipedal motion. And then we go to variations where we just became, basically more gracile, but we also became essentially more brainy. We had bigger brains, and we developed, societal rituals and cultural rituals, tool use, shelter, and so forth. Now, there is a very interesting find, which is the most recent one, and this is this little branching off. And people basically say, oh, shall we put him down here? But it doesn't really matter. And that is the Hobbit. Now, of course, there's the great theory, that essentially all humans came out of the Rift Valley, which is here. This is basically, here, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, going up here. Chad is about over there. And essentially, we do actually find that the migration seem to have gone up here and down there, and then up into Europe, and anything from Asia, they essentially went over Alaska to North America and down to South America. However, there's a fascinating archipelago here, and of course, the true Australians, the indigenous people, we're just basically white interlopers here, invasive species, if you like, in the last 200 years, whereas the indigenous people have been here. They could give 65,000 years, so we really like just the last second. Never mind. Somebody discovered a group of Australian, actually down from Griffith University, and their Indonesian counterparts discovered this really, really interesting group of skeletons in a cave in Java, and it was called Homo floresiensis, and it was only basically a meter tall, and so it's called the Hobbit. And the debate now ranges: was this some sort of early ancestor of humans, or did it just split off? The splitting off theory assumes a process called island dwarfism. Now, island dwarfism is a phenomenon when species disperse to an island where they either have fewer predators or food sources are not really that abundant, they become smaller over the generations. That actually is documented for quite a few island invaders, even elephants on islands like this, chunky elephants. So this could actually be one of the series here. Never mind, I think the astonishing thing is that find is about 20 years old and not a year goes past. I mean, I have two friends who work as anthropologists in Ethiopia from the University of Vienna, and basically they spend half their year digging around in the sand. And actually, I asked them, I said, look, don't we actually know the whole story? I said, well, we know the story, but we're actually filling in now the details so we actually know what our ancestry is truly like. So really quite fascinating. Now you might say, if I go back here, you say, oh, we're all just monkeys, really. Well, yeah, in a sense we are. But what entitles us to a new genus and a new species, being Homo sapiensis, the thinking one? Well, we still have to actually go about nature and try and find food. But what is that? But what sets us apart is this thing. If you ever have a chance, right, and visit caves which have Stone Age paintings, either in Australia, there's fascinating paintings, up in the Northern Territory, and of course, that assumes no mining company comes along and actually blows it all up, which is unbelievably shocking. We basically are the only species who has taken on an enormous cultural revolution. Now, culture is a very broad concept, and everybody defines it slightly different, but it doesn't really matter. We basically have culture in a great different rainbow of expressions. We can make a painting on a cave wall. We actually are such cultured individuals that we have developed a rich tradition of science. And one of the science branches, curiously enough, basically is concerned of how we evolved. Here's Charles Darwin, the theory of evolution. We speak about this in about next lecture and 2 lectures to come. And we do things like this. This is a detail from the Sistine Chapel. Now, no matter how closely I plead with my dog and I give him all sort of tricks, he just never actually gets up the ladder and actually, paints my garage ceiling or anything like this. So, it's really humans who can do that. And people might say, oh, this is the Renaissance. They just basically depicted what they actually thought their religious beliefs were. But no, doesn't really matter. We have Modigliani or anything you choose, really. We are astonishingly diverse. We can build buildings like this. This is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. If you ever have a chance, go there. Or the Sydney Opera House. We can do this. This is a unique cultural transcendence and coming together of artistic ability. Now, again, you can say, right, what makes us truly human? This kind of quite complex thinking that we actually have the leisure now and the desire to create pleasure for artists' sake and for our own sake is actually quite unique. Now, animals also have social interactions, but we take it to a completely different level. That doesn't necessarily mean we are superior. It actually just means we are very, very different from, and quite similar still, from other species of the primates. And we can actually, we say, oh, I don't care really about buildings. I don't really care about paintings. I don't really care about pellet. Well, maybe you like, reading literature. This is Oscar Wilde, who actually wrote The Picture of Dorian Gray and many other works. Man, quite an interesting character, really. So you might say, that's something, which is closer to literature. I mean, I think this is how every university professor should really be closed, and I should really be sitting. Oh, I could actually sit over there. Maybe on the next one, I could actually be quite good. Never mind. Uh, uh, or you can be even more eccentric, and this is Edgar Allan Poe. Now, Edgar Allan Poe wrote possibly the most famous poem concerning birds. And oddly enough, this is going to be the next topic. So, before I go on the mammals, people always ask me, what shall I really, shall I invest in textbooks? Shall I only read stuff which is on the internet or the lecture notes or whatever? Now, there's, various options you can have here. Now, I quite like, if you are serious and you're going to study, animal ecology or environmental science in any form, you won't actually get away with actually buying yourself, a book, and you're going to read this over and over again. And it's actually in the long term going to save you time because you don't actually have to trawl through sources you don't really be able to trust. Here is two which are, a recent edition. The details are actually on your lecture slides. And essentially, it doesn't really matter which one you buy. They're all, fairly good. I just selected those two because they're fairly recent. The other thing I encourage you to do is, here is two of my favorite books, and I don't want to sound like a complete nerd that I only read that really, is essentially it gives you a completely different insight into what zoology can be and the group of animals you study. I have to say, reading this one is almost like, you can't actually put it down, and it gives you a completely new worldview, not a worldview, but a new approach on birds. Quite fascinating. And this is, of course, a later edition by an American author, by Anne, and this one by Jennifer, and this is one by Tim Burkett. Both of them are really excellent. Really, really worthwhile to put on your Christmas list. I would actually go for both, but never mind. And I told you, the Book of Beasts. And at least you can actually make, of course, I'm not going to put any exam questions out of that. Oh, maybe I should. But the point is, it really, if you have kids or you have to, give somebody, somebody with kids and they need a present, buy it and read it yourself a few times before you basically, wrap it again and give it to them. I didn't really say that. And you can also have the big book of birds. And there's also the big book of the sea and the big book of insects. Really great fun. And of course, there is a view, and I quite strongly subscribe to that, but this is just my personal opinion, don't hold me to that. That essentially a new university course being delivered online should be equitable. And equitable means everybody has access to the resources. And there's quite a few repositories now which you can search, which have open source textbooks. Here is OpenStax as one, and here is BC Campus. And I just selected two of them. And there's a free biology book, and this is a short one, this is a full one, and essentially my readings will actually come out of that. That doesn't actually mean that the prescribed textbook for the course is redundant. It's just something you can have for free. There's also books about physics, about stats, of how to write assignments, and so forth. So here you go. I will actually repeat that, and there is actually I put that in a Word file for you to consume and look up, and I will ask Renfrew to actually put that forward. So the next section is about birds. And you might actually want to have a short break as well, but actually let that run. And this is the poem about the raven. If it actually starts, no, it doesn't. Oh, it's a bit disappointing. Oh, here we go. So that's a 5-minute break or 8-minute break, but I leave it going and you can actually, here we go. I can't,